What up, Doc?
On this edition of Ultrasound,
Are you guys ready to slam?
25 years in the mosh pit.
I want to see the biggest circle whirlwind pits.
Enter at your own risk.
Hells yeah, I'm gonna mosh tonight.
In the last 2.5 decades, the mosh pit has evolved from a site of semi-organized hardcore mayhem to a colorful backdrop for car commercials.
It's a car, crowd surfing. Like, come on, you know?
And as more and more fans get in the pit, it's become an increasingly dangerous place.
There's a whole level of people underneath that crowd right now that are getting trampled.
Add sex to the already violent mosh pit scene, and the results can be disturbing and deadly. In the next 60 minutes, you'll see the birth of the slam dance, the explosive growth of a once obscure phenomenon,
We got a new extreme sport.
the mosh backlash,
And we publicly take a stand against moshing.
and of course, some of the sickest stage dives of all time. We'll also examine the intellectual roots of the mosh. Well, maybe not. Ultrasound, the social history of the mosh pit. The lights go down, the band steps out on stage, and a ritual begins that nobody can completely explain.
There's this whole sort of tension that just kind of rises.
You can smell it, you can taste it. You know, it's like that opening shot on The Wizard of Oz where everything starts getting pulled in. And
The audience parts like the Red Sea, and then there's a circle that's constantly revolving.
Nothing's more exciting than nothing looks cooler than just like a sea of people jumping up and down like this.
It looked like an ocean of just bodies all in unison jumping up and down like this. It's like, oh man, undescribable. You gotta see it.
You ever see like a flock of birds or a school of fish where all of a sudden they're all doing the same thing? And you wonder, how the hell did they know to do that at the same time? Well, that's what a pit's like.
What's going on in a pit? What is really going on?
That depends on whom you ask. In any case, it's more than just music.
The geeks, the freaks, you know, it's like the stoners and the rockers and the punkers. Makes them feel like they fit in. That's what it's there for.
It's a bonding, really. It's a real kind of tribal expression of what the music does to you. Unless you're actually in it, you can't really relate.
You're kind of like one when you're in that pit.
There's something in your life, parents, school, job, girlfriend, whatever, that is causing you frustration and it's pent up. So you go to the pit and you're like, ah!
Go to a show and really, really just get it out and become part of a group.
you join with the energy from everyone else in the pit. You feel bodies up against you. You're forcing yourself to constantly stay on your feet.
The pit also satisfies the occasional human need to get a little crazy.
It's like a football game, you know what I'm saying? Everybody gets hurt, it's real aggressive, but it's a release of pent-up energy, you know? That's how you do it. There really is, you know, it's a full contact sport.
Like, I just gotta get something out. Hey, bang my head against the wall. You know, that it's like somebody else feeling like you feeling, and y'all energy is just bouncing off each other. Boom! Yeah, I feel you.
Have a nice bump on the head, be souvenir of the concert.
You're getting all into it. Yeah, you're like, dude, this was dope. You go back and tell your friends, dude, I bucked somebody. You get knocked on your butt, you get back up like, yeah, you know?
I got my glasses broken, bloody nose, got my tongue ring knocked out. Yeah, you go right back in.
Abandoning all thoughts of precaution and safety to do something really awesome that's really moved by the music.
You don't have to know how to dance. You don't have to have no rhythm, or just get out there and just lose it.
I'm very serious about getting kicked in the head and enjoying it very much.
It's still brutal. It's still crazy. I mean, the kids are losing their minds, but the last thing they want to do is hurt each other, man. They just want to have fun. They just want to do their thing.
The various nuances of each pit are most clearly seen from the stage.
You got circular pits, like everybody moves in one direction. Then you got that maniac dangerous. Then you got the two guys holding each other. And you got the big fat guy in the middle to trying to destroy everybody.
I've observed the happy pit, say a Green Day show, and the ugly pit, you know, Pantera show, and the psychology of those two pits. But the spirit of the pit is not an ugly one.
Mosh pits also have a purpose of sorts. They're a way of saluting the band, an alternative form of applause.
It gets us off on stage to see that crowd just going whack like that, and we start going off even harder.
If your music's really good, they'll mosh to it.
To me, that's what a show is, that energy, you know, coming back from the band to the people.
Like, they ain't gonna mosh unless they feel the music.
It makes playing a song that you might have been playing for, 2 years straight on the road, just like it gives it life, and it gives it life for you to be able to
play it and just, you know, give it 110%.
One thing that can get in the way of that band and fan energy exchange is seats.
Get up and let's go crazy! Push it up!
Seats and rock and roll just don't mix. It's not right.
It's hard to move around when you got a fold-up chair in your ass.
We hate playing with seats, man. Hate it.
1, 2, 3, come on!
We don't want to sit there and entertain you.
Kind of destroys the vibe. No matter how hard you want to go off in a seated area, you really can't because your knees are hitting the other person's seat in front of you.
The seats are dangerous. The seats are very dangerous.
Especially if they're not bolted down.
You got a general admission thing going on. There's no room for sitting down. Everybody got to rock.
All y'all sitting down right here, why don't y'all go back there and let the in the back come up here? Get the up.
Get in the pit and try to love someone!
For veteran moshers, there's a set of unspoken rules that governs pit behavior.
Talk about mosh pit etiquette. You know, don't do anything to anybody else in the pit that you wouldn't want done to yourself.
If you are in the pit trying to love someone, bang, knock somebody down, help them back up.
If you fall down in the mosh pit and you're moshing out there, somebody's gonna be able to be there to help you up.
If someone's being really rough, nudge him and say, hey, mellow out.
If you throw punches in the pit, we're coming for you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
If you were 106 pounds, you could jump from the second speaker. If you were my weight, you don't do that, because that's the etiquette, because you don't want to kill anybody.
Beat each other up and take care of each other at the same time.
There's like a method to the madness in there.
I was on the Saturday Night Live show when Fear played, and that was the first time America ever saw anything like that on national TV.
Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the
I don't know, maybe it's been around forever and we're just now calling it the mosh pit. Like in the tribal days where they'd like dance around the fire.
Hey, whatever happened to the term slam dance? I actually miss it.
Today, mosh pits are as integral a part of the concert-going experience as $35 t-shirts. A new generation of fans may not even remember when ramming, slamming, and stage diving weren't all standard operating behavior.
We're pretty young, so like, when I first started going to concerts as a teenager, moshing was like the norm.
Every show that I've gone to in my life, there's been a giant pit.
But there was a time before body surfing and slamming became a staple of arena rock, when the pit was still the purview of a punk subculture.
The whole phenomenon, I think, started as a reaction to dances like, you know, the bump and the hustle. Those kind of really formalized things that punks just had no use for.
By the late 70s, you had a reaction to all this stuff going on in pop culture, and that was called punk. And punk happened 77 to 1980.
I am an anti-coaster. I am an anarcho-coaster.
Bands like the Sex Pistols, the Ramones, and the Clash gave 70s rock a much-needed jolt of adrenaline, and a new kind of dancing arose in response to it.
Punk had its own unique dance, and that was the pogo. And the pogo was where you jumped up and down. It was kind of like a fun, frivolous thing.
Hardcore, a faster and even more intense punk variant, was probably inevitable.
You get this escalating level of violence and aggression, not just in the music, but on the dance floor.
The hardcore dance was the slam dance. Hardcore punk was about being dangerous, and the dance reflected that.
The early days of slam dance is almost really epitomized by the Circle Jerks logo. They have that hardcore kid with the strut like this, and I mean, that is it, you know?
When it was starting, people were trying to figure out how to dance to this music. People started, you know, going in a circle. And it was sort of like that was how we figured out how to dance to it.
Some people call it slamming, and some people call it pogoing, and some call it the skank. But I just call it dancing. This one, they just call this more or less a slam. It's just keep going in a circle, keep moving your arms and stuff, and just bouncing off people, pushing them away. Then you'll see people stepping out through the crowd like this, pushing people off them as they bounce into them. Just try not to get out of that circle, because if you do, you get out of beat.
It was much more intense because the dancing was more of an art form. It was like beautiful to watch. There was skanking and like dudes riding around on your shoulders, creepy crawling, where you just like got squatted down real low and just creepy crawled around.
They didn't even go in a circle at CBGB's all that much. A lot of times it was just people kind of standing in their spot and
like Sick of It All says, demonstrating their style.
These kids were like breakdancing, you know, at the same time they were getting into hardcore. There was like certain individuals that could like really dance, and like no one else could dance like that person.
Some classic hardcore dance styles of that period, real or fake, you decide, were memorably cataloged in a 1995 video by the New York hardcore band Sick of It All.
We came up with different names, and we were like, look at that guy, he dances like a gorilla. Let's put that in the video and make it different.
The first instance of slam dancing can't be precisely nailed down, but everyone pretty much agrees where the trend started.
Slam dancing originated here in Los Angeles. When I first saw the punk rock movement, I felt that it was very, very important to document it for history's sake.
Penelope Spheeris' seminal 1981 documentary of the LA punk scene, The Decline of Western Civilization, captured some of the earliest images of hardcore pits and spread them across the country.
I saw The Decline of the Western Civilization, that documentary, which blew me away. There was only a few people that even knew about the stage diving and the slamming.
Some people say they remember the day that California-style hardcore behavior finally made it to New York City.
It was Saturday, March 14th, 1981, was when slam dancing was first spotted in New York City. Black Flag played.
That one stands out. I think it was the first time they came to New York, and maybe the first time they came to the East Coast, so all these people came up from D.C. because they were really excited.
The first song that Black Flag launched into, these kids immediately started slamming. You know, pushing, shoving, smacking, punching even.
And there was all dudes. They were like basically fighting with each other, jumping off the stage onto each other.
Jumping boots first.
Boots first, onto each other, and watching from the balcony being like, wow, something I don't want any part of it. There's nothing punk about that.
The entire gig was just marred with fistfights. It was an absolutely ugly thing.
In the small clubs where it all began, stage diving and slam dancing were a spontaneous and very physical way for bands and their fans to connect.
In the 70s, it was like the altar of the rock star. There was the audience, and then there was the brilliant musician playing his guitar solo.
What punk rock was always all about is when you went and saw a show, you and the band were one, you know, and that's what's so incredible. It's not like, you know, Aerosmith or some rock band who's up there going, look at me, I'm doing my lead.
Hardcore was about the band and the kids are equal. And that's why slam dancing was okay. That's why stage diving was okay, because you were really at one with the band.
And stage diving got really, really popular, and a lot of bands really, really tolerated it. But after a while, it got to be so prevalent and such a pain in the neck to the bands, because people would jump up on stage and bang into guitars and untune them. And any band that really wanted to play well started to get annoyed by these stage divers.
Stage diving and slam dancing made their national TV debut in 1981 when the late comic and CBGB habitué John Belushi and writer Michael O'Donoghue invited the LA punk band Fear to perform on Saturday Night Live.
Belushi got Fear on the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, Fear!
As a matter of fact, I was the first dude to dive off the stage at that show. They cut it off the air, but we kept going in the studio. And that was the first time America ever saw anything like that on national TV.
Nevertheless, slam dancing remained pretty much an underground phenomenon for the next several years.
For about a half a decade, there was a very pure tribal underground of the hardcore movement. And it stayed within itself for a long time.
Then, as hardcore began an inevitable cross-fertilization with the exploding new metal scene, the music was transformed, and so was the pit.
In the mid-'80s, there was what was known as the crossover. And the crossover was when heavy metal kids and non-punk kids joined the scene.
The crossover era of DRI, that was some insane pitting.
They say they were hardcore bands, but if you closed your eyes, it just sounded like a metal band, you know, playing metal riffs.
85, 86 bands, that was, I think, really when Metallica started to kick it into gear. And I mean, they were a direct derivative of hardcore punk. You know, they just went more the metal route.
We probably emulated the same dance, but gave it our own seal of approval.
In the 80s, I think there was probably a lot of the punk guys hated the metal guys, and a lot of the metal guys thought the punk guys were fools.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Moshing changed at that point. The hardcore kids were, probably a lot more outcast types than the metal kids, and they had perhaps a bit stronger sense of community. The metal kids were probably more aggressive and not rooted in that sense of community and that philosophy. They were just there to, brutalize people.
As moshing was embraced by growing masses of metalheads, it began to eclipse the previous metal rite of headbanging.
I'm just glad people are done banging their heads.
Yeah, dude, the headbanging
That
thing
hurt.
is kind of like the whole...
Oh yeah, moshing totally replaced headbanging. Oceans of people in the early 80s, like, just simply going, yeah, metal, metal, metal. That's gone, and it's replaced with these kids like, metal, metal, ah, and like bumping into each other.
Before long, thanks to shows like MTV's Headbangers Ball, a whole nation of rowdy young fans got turned on to the new scene.
I first started seeing slam dancing. It was Santa at the Headbangers Ball.
Santa Claus, the man, the myth, a slam dancer.
Do you remember he would be in the pit?
Yeah.
Kinda like scooting around in there?
We had a giant mosh pit in our Indians video in 1987.
Old Anthrax videos and stuff, and guys with mullets and jerseys and denim jackets just dancing around in a circle.
Those videos set a standard. When those people came to our shows, they wanted to live that video every time.
I remember there was a video for Exodus, this band called Exodus that had a song called The Toxic Waltz.
Oh, the Toxic Waltz!
And they just had this ginormous pit.
I saw a Megadeth video for, what was it, Wake Up Dead. The big dudes are crawling around in the cage.
No.
And they had like a 8-guy mosh pit, and they were basically just jogging in a circle. But I thought that was pretty rad.
Pretty soon, mosh consciousness spread beyond metal videos. Long before rappers like Snoop Dogg were spitting rhymes at crowds of body surfers at Lollapalooza shows, hip-hoppers had found common ground with metalheads in a number of iconic music videos.
Slam, yeah, that was
That
dope.
video, that went off, they would go crazy.
That was ill.
Matter of fact, they one of the black rock and rollers of hip hop to me. The hardcore gutterness, like mosh pit, close to the heavy metal. I think I seen it start off really with Onyx, man.
In 1991, Anthrax teamed up with Public Enemy for an early rap metal foray on PE's Bring the Noise.
We did Bring the Noise together, and they would all come out, and we would do the song together, and that's when the whole place would just go nuts. And that's when you would see people in the pit, and you know those dudes are in the pit for the first time ever.
I can remember it at Lollapalooza, and I saw like maybe the most wicked pit of my life.
At the start of the 90s, moshing was pretty much limited to various underground music scenes, but that was about to change. In 1991, Jane's Addiction frontman Perry Farrell started the Lollapalooza Festival.
Perry Farrell sure had a genius idea to put together this package tour of bands and to really make a large bet on the hope that there was a huge audience out there of kids who wanted to rock but who were really bored with the spandex metal that was everywhere at the time.
Perry Farrell was going to put together a tour that had the kind of bands that covered a huge spectrum. It was, you know, that was exciting.
7 different bands, and they're like every different kind of style. And it's really intense.
Lollapalooza 91 brought with it both alternative sounds and body language.
Lollapalooza, I'd say, was like when it came big to the people, like moshing.
The first time I remember seeing it on a huge scale like that was going to one of the Lollapalooza concerts and just realizing that it was completely insane.
I guess it's when it became kind of just the thing to do at a concert.
That was the first time, I think, for a lot of people to come there and see that and go, wow, you know, this is what goes on at these alternative rock concerts.
That first Lollapalooza tour introduced moshing to the concert masses, but the real nationwide mosh explosion was sparked that same year by a now classic grunge rock video.
When it became big in the mainstream, people weren't really doing it at our shows. When Nirvana and all that came out big,
then I guess is when it came back at our shows.
It seemed to me that Lollapalooza made Nevermind inevitable.
With, you know, the rise of bands like Nirvana and Soundgarden, that's when MTV grabbed a hold of it, and Nirvana made the video for Teen Spirit.
And then all of a sudden, Nirvana became huge, and that video was played all the time. What happened was it made it, you had to mosh.
All of a sudden, you know, you had 10 million people buying that record, and now you had 10 million people wanting to experience that.
When kids started seeing the Nevermind video or the Even Flow video or going to Lollapalooza, that was their reality all of a sudden. That was it. It was as if music didn't exist 20 years ago.
Ongoing Lollapalooza tours offered an interbreeding ground for all kinds of musical styles, and moshing for the first time as a signature activity for all different kinds of fans.
What do you guys think of Lollapalooza?
I want everybody to meet each other and know each other, you know, like a big body of musicians that all know each other. Only good things can come of it.
Lollapalooza crossbred rap and rock and even injected white punk moshing into the hip-hop concert scene.
Ready to fill your cap, you can't believe prices of death bone wax.
Somehow when I guess the first hip-hop group was put on stage at Lollapalooza, that right there, that particular time helped to open people's minds.
I can remember it at Lollapalooza. I saw like maybe the most wicked pit of my life.
I don't think, you know, you could possibly have had a more culturally, sexually, musically, like, diverse thing happening there. And to me, that was actually really cool and really powerful.
Lollapalooza also popularized stage diving and crowd surfing, forging a new connection between bands and their fans.
Crowd surfing was your sort of moment in the spotlight and really just wanting to get closer to the band.
You're not in a band, you know what I mean? You're not like the star of the show, but in a way you can be the star of the show.
Yeah. We come from a scene where, you know, if you're a member of the crowd, you're probably going to end up on the stage at some point during the night. You know, if not, you at least have the same mentality.
Or the band's going to come down in the pit with you.
Yeah.
As moshing started to dilute the focus of a show, the stars up on stage started angling to reclaim the spotlight.
The pit was the show, not the band. And I come from an era where the band is the show. I don't want the pit to be the show, unless I'm in the pit.
The band started body surfing and slam dancing, and it was like the band's kind of on top of the audience, not the audience on top of each other anymore.
There was a shift with Eddie Vedder and Kurt Cobain. Jumping into the crowd and getting passed around almost made you appear to be some sort of Christ-like figure, even down to the way they'd spread their arms and just roll their eyes back.
I remember like this kind of like messianic feel that Chris Cornell had, where he could just lay his hands out and do the Jesus Christ pose and be carried like across the sea of people.
Moshing was not about that. It was about losing yourself in the crowd, and here it was about elevating yourself literally over the crowd.
It wasn't all men up there, of course. No one understood the art of getting attention better than a woman called Courtney Love.
I hate this place! Courtney Love would jump off the stage into the crowd, and her dress, already being somewhat frayed, would get more torn up.
Courtney's a very savvy woman about, you know, rock archetypes, and she understands that if you do jump in the crowd, that's kind of like the ultimate expression of, you know, bonding with your audience. It's an extremely intimate experience, as she found out the hard way, and she eventually stopped because she was getting groped.
Pretty soon, everybody was moshing, even one-time teen pop princess Debbie Gibson, who took the plunge one strange night with hardcore pioneers, the Circle Jerks.
We have a special guest who's going to sing this next number with us, and her name is Debbie Gibson.
By this point, of course, people were starting to wonder out loud how cool moshing could actually be.
We publicly take a stand against moshing.
Oh man, when that dude from Pearl Jam dove out of the balcony, I was like, it's over.
When these shows first started, the people who were moshing were kind of like involved in the punk scene and the alternative scene. And as time went on and things became more popular, then you started to get the guys who were just kind of the lunkhead frat boys who thought, hey, this is cool, I'm gonna go check out this show.
When alternative was the mainstream, and part of that alternative was like mosh pits and everything, which became the mainstream, then it was everywhere.
The roots of it are genuine. The manufacture of it and the commercialization of it is a little less genuine.
When it's in Miller Lite beer commercials, you know its time is gone.
Imagine the ad agency, a bunch of jerk-offs sitting around with suits going, moshing's hip. That really shows you to the extreme of where it's gone.
It's typical of what goes on. Anything that's good is discovered by corporate America, exploited, and dissolved until it's dead.
And when you see it in the new Offspring video, you know its time is gone.
When you see like people crowd surfing to Sheryl Crow or Joe Cocker, come on.
I couldn't believe that they were moshing to the Spin Doctors.
The softest songs will get the hardest reactions. Dude, when I come around.
And then, the death knell perhaps, people went from moshing to unlikely music to moshing to no music at all.
Don't do it in this running circle. Hey, the music hasn't started yet.
Lollapalooza kids are starting to like mosh in between bands to like just like background music.
We can take a break and they'll slam. They just really want to get
warm-up music before the show.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time to stop all this and look for something new.
In the wake of this most recent Woodstock, it's not possible to see a mosh pit or to see a crowd behaving that violently and not feel kind of creeped out and nervous about it.
By 1997, the peaceable, hippie-esque Lollapalooza vibe was being supplanted by a darker new metal mood, spearheaded by such bands as Limp Bizkit, Korn, and the Deftones. Along with this ominous new music came a change in the character of the mosh pit.
When I see what goes on in the pit now, it's to say what it was 10 years ago, it's certainly kicked up a notch.
The whole idea behind the mosh pit is sometimes misunderstood by these sick idiots who get in there.
You get in the pit to let out your aggressions, not beat up on the people that you're having a good time with.
You just get a lot of idiots, a lot of morons.
Too many jocks, sportos, Nazis, and fascists.
A lot more pits, a lot more violence, a lot more blood. A lot more people not caring that they're bloody.
We start out doing the wave, and then somebody gets a little more violent, and then the other guy gets a little more violent, and the next thing you know, there's a full-scale riot going on down there.
Anytime people get passionate, they fight.
It's crazy. You come here and expect to get hurt or just get out of the pit, you know?
Concert med-tent doctors saw this violent new moshing scene develop firsthand.
Typically, we see a lot of minor contusions to the head.
I crowd surfed before and I fell on my head. Woo!
To the neck, shoulders.
The guy jumped up on the stage for his 2 seconds of fame, you know, and then jumped down again. And he caught this chick right in the face. She was just standing there with her boyfriend watching it. And he kicked his teeth all over her boyfriend's shirt.
We see a lot of lacerations by blunt impact above the eye, eyebrow, below the eye.
One girl broke her nose open in a club. One guy blew his knee out.
We had a girl lose a finger at a show.
I got smashed against the cement. Look at those bruises.
I see this guy with his arm, his elbow is completely going the wrong direction, and the bone is sticking out, and he's bleeding, and he's just going, best thing I've ever done in my life.
The guy got his ear bit off. He was in the pit, and someone bit his ear off. The guy didn't even leave.
I would be at shows, and I go in the bathroom, some kid just run in laughing like, ha ha ha, and his face is bleeding. He's like, dude, I just got in the face, dude. That's bad. I love it.
You're looking out at the crowd and just be going like, geez, people must be getting killed out there.
Enter at your own risk, okay?
Despite the increasing risk of getting down in the pit, young women continued wanting to take part.
A lot of times the people who are rocking the hardest in the pit are girls.
Yeah, we see girls, and I like that.
I can't imagine why they would want to be there.
I just get in the pit and I annihilate people. It's fun.
That's where the excitement is.
You don't get any better than the pit.
It was awesome. My ribs are killing me, though.
That you should be able to go in there, and if you feel like moshing, you mosh it, and not have to worry that you're going to be treated any differently.
Women also faced moshing problems that were specifically their own.
If a woman's got the guts to get up on top of a crowd, she should be able to do so without having her breasts groped and the rest of her body explored by the rest of the crowd.
There's usually two types of people. There's the kind of guys who are like there to protect you and they don't want to hurt you, and then there's always like sadistic people.
There should be equal opportunity for black eyes, maybe, because that's, I guess, why you go in there. But you shouldn't have to worry that just because you have breasts that you can't go into the mosh pit, because they're like a chew toy in the mosh pit.
It happens a lot, like while we're playing, you know, I'll look out and see some girl floating around and see guys' hands drift up their shirts.
I hate seeing guys grabbing up on them when they're trying to enjoy themselves.
I'll stop and say, what the you know, do you have a sister? How would you like that to be your sister? What would you do if your buddy did that to your sister? How would that make you feel?
The vile new mosh pit behavior of the post-Lollapalooza period surfaced most unforgettably and appallingly at the notorious Woodstock '99 festival. Woodstock '99 was hyped as another peace, love, and music affair along the lines of the original festival 30 years earlier.
Woodstock '99, gotta love ya!
We're enjoying the peace, love, and happiness.
By Friday night, the peaceful vibe was waning as new metal heroes Korn came on to get the crowd moshing.
That's right. See that? That's what Korn does when they come.
By Saturday night, Woodstock '99 had become a very different and much darker experience.
It wasn't really a pit. I was going through the crowd and then a pit started.
Mosh pits are opening up everywhere. Crazy, crazy energy running through the whole entire crowd.
There have really been some scary moments here just with crowd violence.
Woodstock '99, yeah, the mosh pit was not just a crime scene, but a well-documented crime scene.
Along with the now usual wild violence, Woodstock mosh pits also subjected women to unfettered groping and several reported instances of rape.
It was disgusting. I was molested, and I hate all men now.
To see women being grabbed in the crowd or having their clothes ripped off as they're crowd surfing, as a woman, it made me feel very nervous and uncomfortable.
I think women got themselves in situations they couldn't handle. They didn't realize what they were getting into.
As the crowd scene at Woodstock grew nastier, the musicians on stage sometimes made it worse.
I don't think they should have had people like Limp Bizkit here when we're promoting peace and he gets up there and says, peace.
They can't have Limp Bizkit and then they come out and say, all right, the crowd's gonna calm down, and then they have Rage Against the Machine come out, all right, you guys gotta calm down, and then Metallica come out. You can't do that.
How scary was it for you up there when they started ripping that place apart, when they started taking the plywood off the towers and stuff?
God. Dude, it's not our fault.
In the wake of this most recent Woodstock, it's not possible to see a mosh pit or to see a crowd behaving that violently and not feel kind of creeped out and nervous about it.
Woodstock '99 was an ominous warning. Following that now infamous event, many bands began to realize that they'd have to be ready to cool out the crowds at their concerts.
You guys gotta stay off the stage, man. You guys are f***ing up the whole show.
You gotta like try and take responsibility, go out, say something to the crowd, calm them down, because if you don't, they'll go crazy.
The bands can encourage what goes on in the pit and what goes on up front, and the more that they encourage the aggression going on, obviously the fans take the cue and go do what the bands tell them to do.
I think we actually had some kind of a policy where people climbed up on top of people. Like the first time, I think they'd get a warning, but if they did it again, then they would actually get kicked out of the shows.
I think the artist has a responsibility to let the crowd know that if they're gonna be rowdy and stuff, that they have to do it in a safe way. And you know, if things get to a point where you think something dangerous could happen, then you stop it.
We won't let anybody get hurt at our show if we could help it. And if we were to ever see like a fight break out or something, we'll stop the music and handle that.
In the end, though, curbing concert violence is mainly a job for security professionals, not musicians.
It's the job of the band to get the crowd riled up. I mean, that's why we're all there. And it's security's job to make sure they have a controlled situation.
There's people out there getting exhausted, you know, and you come over, kicking people in the head, just be careful. That's the main key, is being safe, man.
This is not a boxing match. A few of them got carried away in there, and we talked to them outside.
Those guys are actually unsung heroes in a lot of ways. We played this one place that was kind of like a slope up from the stage, and these guys were catching kids like before these kids fell right on their head, like on the stage.
We have a security chief that kind of lets people know what to expect and what to.
He just has to look at you. Go.
And there are other ways to stop mosh pit violence before it gets started.
I've noticed a lot of shows that have like some kind of like barrier that goes in between the crowd. That's helping a lot.
T-barricade is basically a barricade that juts out into the audience and divides the audience into two halves.
If you don't want the whole floor to get going, then put that barricade out there, you know.
The T-barricade just breaks up the crowd a little bit and releases some of that tension, makes it a little bit less dangerous.
A little less, but who's ultimately responsible for fending off those mosh pit dangers that remain?
When you go to a show like this, you gotta look out for yourself and all the people that you're with and anybody that's at the show with you.
The band's gotta look out for the crowd's gotta look out for each other, the crowd has gotta look out for the bouncers, and the bouncers have to look out for the crowd.
The only thing I could say about the mosh pit is, like, you know, it's that old saying, if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. You know, if you don't have a place there, don't be around it. Stand back, avoid it.
We might love it, but I'm telling you, all you moshers, be careful. There's some brothers out there that don't know what moshing means, and when you bump into them like that, it's on. I mean, I done seen a couple of guys out there get in the mosh pit and start moshing like they crazy, and then they get beat up, you know what I'm saying? So make sure you don't get jumped on when you out there moshing. For real.
Punk rock aerobics is a workout to punk rock music. We don't do stage dives, that's the one thing.
We will
We talk
though.
about
If
it.
we get a bigger class,
Yeah.
we can.
I see where this mosh stuff is taking us.
Okay, let's recap. Slam dancing started in the early 1980s as a spontaneous response to underground hardcore music. It evolved along with the thrash metal scene and then went national in the 90s thanks to the Lollapalooza tours and a number of mosh-conscious music videos. Then moshing got maybe a little too mainstream, but despite subsequent mosh pit fatalities, it never went away. And with the rise of nu metal in the late 90s, moshing got more and more violent, culminating in the frenzy and rape of Woodstock '99. So what's the state of the pit right now, 20 years on?
Nothing punk about the mosh pit, you know, and the Y2K. What is punk in a way is like be creative, you know what I mean? There's plenty of dance steps that you can come up with that are like inventive and sexier than, you know, beating each other up.
You mean moshing has now become a cliche?
Sometimes it looks so choreographed. Can we have the mosh pit choreographer in, please? I mean, what's up with that?
It's so far beyond irrelevant now that it's actually kind of funny.
Some performers say they're just too famous to take part in the pit anymore.
Back in the day, it was cool because I could just go in anonymous person and just go rock out, you know? Now it's like I can't really pit, like, because I'm, like, if I go down in the crowd, like at shows, I'll try to go down in the crowd and get in, you know, with the folks and just be like, boom, on Kobe, and I'm like, whoa!
And some musicians say they feel no need for traditional mosh pit antics.
I don't have a problem with people just sitting in their seats all night, enjoying me, watching me rock out. You know, I don't need a pit or a crowd participation to boost my ego anymore. I do a fine job of boosting my own ego. You know what I mean?
But then there are people like Maura Jasper and Hilken Mancini, two original punk fans from back in the day, who say they're reclaiming the spirit of slamming by reinventing it as a workout possibility.
Hilken's our certified aerobics instructor, and I'm your certified goof.
Yes, it's punk rock aerobics, a combination of vintage mosh pit moves with a physical fitness regimen.
Punk rock aerobics is a workout to punk rock music. We made up some of the moves, and some are based on stuff that is really derivative of what you would expect to be like punk rock motion.
We do things that basically you would see in rock clubs.
We have like our simulated mosh pit. And then we'll say, just think about those guys in the pit. We have them like racing around the room in a big circle. And it's great when there's a lot of people.
Note also the elimination of the usual all-male fight club vibe.
We do air guitar.
Our air guitar is like anybody else's air guitar.
But everybody's air guitar is different.
We have these things set up in a way that we can yell out, skank. For people who've been taking the class, they know what to do.
There's a lot of free-form pogoing.
And it's also more fun to be doing in a safe context where you can laugh at yourself.
You know there's not like beer bottles gonna be smashed in your face and scary guys.
We don't do stage dives, that's the one thing.
We will
talk
though.
about
if
it.
we get a bigger class, we can.
Punk rock aerobics may be the ideal place for those who, shall we say, outgrown the pit.
I decided to give it a break for a while. For me, you know, I can't afford to jam a finger or you know, break something or worse.
I went into the pit recently for like 5 minutes, and I was so tired.
We're too big for that now. I mean, size-wise.
I done flips, all kind of crazy till I pulled a growing muscle. That was it for me, man. Like, hell no, I'm not playing with you kids no more.
You gotta understand, okay, now what is an old dude going in the pit for?
I am by far the oldest guy in the pit. 37-year-old Mosher, still hanging tough.
Oh yeah, the young guys are going in to prove that they're older, and the old guys are going in to prove that they're younger. There we go, that's it.
I'm too old for it now. It's time for some 41 to do it and do it to the best of their ability, because in 10 years they're going to be too old to do it.
When I was younger, I thought it was really cool. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't go in a pit now.
Nah, I'm too lazy now. I'd be all like...
Every generation needs their own hero, their own thing, their own hobby, their own dance, you know? So when I first started doing it, it was one thing. For me, it's lost something. But to the kids who are going to see Blink-182 now at a show and going crazy, it's a whole new thing for them. They don't know my experience with it, so really they haven't lost anything. They get to go to a show and have a ball, and that's awesome.
So after 20 years of slamming and stage diving, moshing is still with us. Moshers may outgrow the pit in the normal course of growing up, but as long as there's a new generation of young fans eager to vent their adrenaline, the moshing spirit, at least, will probably always be with us.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get down to the pit.
Well, right up where the action is, man. Right up there.
That's what it is. It brings people together.
How can you go to a metal show and not mosh?
When I get up and I look in the mirror and I got a bunch of lumps on my head, I had a good day.